Thank you for joining us once again. It's been a while, been about a month since we've been talking about Genesis, and we're going to continue to pick up where we left off in Genesis 21. We're going to finish up talking about Abimelech coming back to Abraham. But when we started all this back in January, we have gotten all the way up to the next generation has been born, and that is Isaac. Now, Abraham came into the picture in Genesis 12, and that is when God picked out one man, the father literally of our faith, Abraham, and he chose him over all the people of the world so that he would teach his children. And he took Abraham and gave him that call that Abraham had to step out in faith, leave where he was in the Ur of Chaldees, and to go all the way up to Haran, which is in southern Turkey. And from there he stayed 5 years. His father passed away. Then him and Lot came all the way down into Canaan land, found famine in the land, journeyed on their own all the way down to Egypt. In Egypt, Abraham almost lost his wife, but for the intervention of God, Abraham story would have ended there. But God basically rescued his wife, and also through Pharaoh made Abraham a very rich man, because Abraham gave him gold and silver and maidservants and donkeys and camels. Abraham came back to Canaan land, and between his herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen, they started arguing because they were so wealthy and they had so much cattle or so much goats and sheep and oxen that they had to split apart. Abraham looked at Lot and said, "You chose which way you want to go. You choose." Abraham chose to go down to, or Lot chose to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham stayed in that area with his family. And you know the story from that. After Lot went to Sodom and Gomorrah, 4 kings, marauders of the area, came up against the cities there in the region, started stealing everything of value, including Lot and his family. Abraham caught wind of what was going on and pursued this army that was sweeping through the region, consuming like locusts all the wealth of the region, pursued them all the way up towards Damascus near Syria. And there, through God's intervention, when him and 318 men conquered this army and took back all. On the way back with the wealth, he stopped by Jerusalem, where he met a gentleman by the name of Melchizedek, which is king and priest. And according to the New Testament, he had no beginning and no end. He was a type and shadow of Jesus Christ. There, Abraham paid him tithes of 10%, gave the rest to the king of Sodom, and restored basically the king back into that area. Well, after that, God appeared to Abraham and said, "I haven't forgot my promise to you. I'm going to make you a father of many nations. Your seed's going to be as the sand of the sea and the stars of the sky." And Abraham wanted to know how you're going to do this. And that's where God made covenant with Abraham. And the two basically became one through the blood of the innocent sacrifice. Well, after this, God had given a promise to Abraham that he was going to have a child. But when Abraham was 86 years of age, he got a little impatient, and Sarah gave to him her maidservant Hagar from Egypt. And there, through Hagar, Ishmael was born to Abraham. And it wasn't a promise yet, but at age 99, the Lord reappeared to Abraham and basically said, "I'm going to give you a son." And he came down with his 2 angels. They had a meal together. It was kind of like a Passover, because after that, the angels visited Gomorrah, and there the destruction of Gomorrah occurred. Lot left, his wife turned back, turned into a pillar of salt, and Lot's demise was basically to sleep with his daughter and produce 2 nations that ultimately aggravated the children of Israel. in the future. After that, God told Abraham, he said, now it's time for you to circumcise yourself. And God told him, this is the sign of the covenant that we're going to have between one another. And that is where you cut the flesh off and you circumcise. You know, folks, we need to cut the flesh out of our life in order to get the spiritual promises of God. Okay, after that, Abraham left and with Sarah went to Gerar, where they met Abimelech. Abimelech took Sarah in and was going to make him his wife, but for the intervention of God again. And then God rescued Sarah, preserved the promise for Abraham when Abraham prayed. Abraham and Sarah stayed in that vicinity, and when Abraham was 100 years old, that's when Isaac was born. Now, in Genesis chapter 23, where we left off, Isaac was now 3 years old. He was weaned. There was a party there celebrating him being weaned from his mother. And that is when Sarah asked Abraham to send Ishmael and Hagar out. And also God directed him this time. And Hagar and Ishmael left out of Abraham. You know, you have to deal with the flesh before you can get the promises of God. And tomorrow night we're going to talk about this character Abimelech. Abimelech, my father is king, is coming back to visit Abraham again. And there they're going to have a covenant relationship restored there. So I'll talk to you again tomorrow night.